Buongiorno a tutti e bentornati alla sessione pomeridiana della conferenza finale del progetto Notte Sicura Chill Out e alla conferenza di riassunto dei risultati di quello che il progetto Neutravel ha svolto in questi 3 anni di intervento. Oggi siamo qui in questa strana conferenza e nella sessione pomeridiana vogliamo concentrarci sulle reti. Il tema portante di questa conferenza abbiamo deciso di farlo diventare un qualcosa che rappresentasse quello che poi è il nostro reticolato, sia a livello italiano che a livello europeo. Le reti sono importanti, la società e i vari mondi che noi attraversiamo sono complessi e questa complessità la possiamo affrontare esclusivamente se siamo in molti con diversi punti di vista. Oggi pomeriggio la sessione è dedicata al drug checking e abbiamo voluto partire proprio dalle reti per descrivere quello che è un servizio che da molti anni viene svolto in Europa. Le reti europee ci sono state molto di aiuto nella costruzione di questo servizio, a partire dal progetto Bounce fino ad arrivare ai giorni attuali. Oggi pomeriggio avremo con noi 3 persone significative della rete europea, Mireia Ventura di Energy Control, che ci presenterà il servizio internazionale che loro hanno di analisi delle sostanze. Dopodiché andremo in Olanda, dove ci sarà Daan van der Gouwe, che è un ricercatore del Trimbos Institute e lavora all'interno del DIMS, che è un sistema statale di drug checking, di analisi delle sostanze. Infine andremo in Austria e avremo con noi Anton, Luf&Alexandra Karden, che sono del progetto Check It. Loro hanno un'unità mobile che guidano in diversi contesti del divertimento. Il drug checking in Italia è partito un po' lentamente perché per molti anni è rimasto una pratica informale all'interno di contesti informali, ma grazie al progetto Bounce e all'aiuto della rete europea e anche delle reti italiane, oggigiorno il drug checking nella regione Piemonte è un livello essenziale di assistenza. Per cui siamo andati oltre il falso mito che il drug checking fosse un servizio illegale, un qualcosa che non si poteva fare. Siamo andati oltre le paure degli operatori rispetto a questo servizio e oggi siamo a questo punto. La sessione sarà in inglese, così tutti i nostri ospiti possono comprendere che cosa stiamo dicendo e faremo un po' un viaggio all'interno di quelli che sono i servizi di drug checking in Europa. Per cui chi avrà qualche criticità nel comprendere potrà rivedere questa sessione su YouTube e su Facebook. Su YouTube potrete avere i sottotitoli perché YouTube li traduce automaticamente. Passo adesso allora all'inglese. So, I'm switching to talk in English and today we are here in this conference that is organized to celebrate the end of a national project called Notte Sicura Chill Out. We decided to focus on networks for all the conference and because they are a basic condition to work in and with the complexity of the society nowadays. In this session, we will go through the European network, and especially we are going to focus on a network that connect organizations that perform drug checking services in Europe, namely TEDI, the Trans-European Drug Information Project. We will start from a local organization, the local organization that this is our main stakeholder here in Italy, that is Centro Antidoping Bertinaria, that makes possible our drug checking service here in the Piedmont region. Then we decided to invite in this session the organization that are representing a model for us and that are carrying out drug checking services in a way that we would like to go towards. Energy Control from Spain, Barcelona, with their international drug checking service. Then DIMS from the Netherlands with a national system of drug checking. And finally, Check It from Austria with their mobile unit, and they are able to bring this service in this different kind of settings. In Italy, the story of drug checking was not so easy, since it was a practice that was carried out only in informal context. Basically, because drug checking was supposed to be illegal, but this was something like a urban legend, or perhaps a concern of official harm reduction service providers, because when with Now Travel, we decided to analyze the legal literature, and we also interviewed lawyers and judges. We discovered that drug checking was not illegal. It was not explicitly forbidden by the law. So, since many partygoers were asking us the possibility to test the drugs before using them, we decided to go beyond the national border and connect with organizations performing drug checking in Europe. So thanks to European funding and the BAUMS project, carried out with two organizations that were performing drug checking in Portugal and in Slovenia, namely Checkin and Drogart, we finally started to implement drug checking formally in Italy too. Thanks to the help of European networks like TEDI and UNET, and to the work of local networks like CNCA and ETIRDD, today, drug checking in the Piedmont region is a basic level of assistance. And this means that every people that use drugs may ask to the National Health Service to be provided with a drug checking service. So, let's start with our journey in Europe and in drug checking services. I want to introduce you Fabrizio Seganti, that is a chemist of Centro Antidoping Bertinaria, and is the person that mostly follow us during intervention in fields, in legal and illegal contexts. So welcome, Fabrizio. I'm very pleased to introduce you in this conference, and the floor is yours. Tell us a story.
Hi, Elisa. Thanks for the invitation. So, as she said before, I'm Fabrizio Seganti. I am a chemist.
We are not hearing you.
Oh, now I can hear me. Prova, prova, prova. Prova.
No, we are still not hearing you.
Now. Prova.
Have you got your earplugs? Or something connected to your computer?
No, at all. Okay, they can hear me.
It seems
I can hear me too.
People can hear Fabrizio?
Yeah, they wrote me.
Okay, so if we are the only one that are not hearing Fabrizio, let's try just to check something here.
Hi,
okay,
Marco.
Try to speak.
Yeah, prova, prova, prova.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Okay. Sorry.
No, restart. Thanks for the invitation. And so, as you said before, I'm Fabrizio Seganti. I am a chemist specialized in forensic chemistry. I work in Centro Regionale Antidoping of Orbassano, near Turin, in Italy, since 2009. My lab is a kind of drug lab, and our activity is closely linked with every single aspect that concerns drugs world, the entire drugs world. We have more than 10 years old experience in the drugs field. We have an intense research activity. We analyze every year more than 30,000 samples of biological matrices, do our collaborations with hospitals, drug addiction services, drug relicensing centers, and workplace medicine. We have daily cooperation with police forces for qualitative analysis on sales of drugs. We work also with prosecutors or judges that need us like technical assistance for drug-correlated crimes, typically dealing of substances or fatal or acute intoxication. In general, drug analysis can be easier when we look for common and well-known substances, we have a lot of information about the classic substances like cannabis, cocaine, heroin, MDMA, and others. We know everything about these classes of substances. We know their chemical characteristics, how they can be extracted and analyzed, and overall, what's their behavior in human metabolism. Performing a good analysis becomes harder when we are in front of something completely unknown. Is the case of MPS. MPAs are the ultimate huge challenge for a drug lab. Obviously, MPAs are new psychoactive substances. Very briefly on MPAs, they can be completely new molecules or partially new, derived from old structure with substitution. They also can be all the molecules reutilized after they were abandoned for their first purpose, typically, usually a medical purpose. All these MPS are desirable from users. He was looking for something that gives to him some effects similar to the classic ones, but that are not detectable in standard drug test because of their new form. They are inexpensive and relatively easy to find on darknet. And these two factors combined pushed MPS in a massive way on an illicit market. The dangerousness of MPS is for user that often doesn't know at all what he has bought. He doesn't know dosing it. He doesn't know time of appearance of effects and the side effects. Neither laboratories and hospitals can identify and quantify these molecules, so they cannot face up the intoxication with a specific efficient treatment. They don't have shared protocols for MPS intoxication. The illicit market produces new MPS in a very fast way, and for labs like the mine wine is impossible go so fast. For example, steps of a standard scientific research needs, first of all, the evidence of a new MPS on market. Usually we have notice of these rarely from acute or lethal intoxication case or from police seizures of drugs, but in both cases when substances are already circulating in the street market from an uncertain period. Second step of a research, we have to provide as a reference standard. The standards sometimes don't exist yet, or they are really expensive, and this process generally needs a month. And only at the end of these two steps, we can focus on the instrumental method to detect and quantitate this MPS after several months from the first evidence of the appearance. And I'm not talking about metabolism study, which is even longer. All these huge efforts that required a lot of money and time is necessary every time when a new MPS appears. And as I said before, I could create hundreds of different analogs with a few basic substitution starting from a structure model. About harm reduction, my first experience with harm reduction has been with BOUNCE, a European project linked to TERI network, accredited by MCDDA. When the project ended up, we continued this activity with the same characteristics with the NeuTravel project, a project funded by Piedmont region. The aims of these two projects were to improve the awareness and knowledge among partygoers about drugs, try to understand more about the consumption patterns, and try to identify with drug checking dangerous substances and eventually inform early warning system with alerts. Those alerts can be shared with the local hospital facilities, for example. The main target of our activity were rave parties, Gouwe parties, music festival, in general, all the places and the users that are really hard to reach. Operating in this illegal context, our support and action could reveal the crucial. We, moreover, have considered this as an opportunity to have an actual frame of what are really circulating in the market and eventually informing the early warning system about new molecules. As chemists, the biggest opportunity was to face up for the first time an NPS, a new NPS. When Elisa contacted us, I personally took this call with happiness because I was curious of something I didn't know at all. I had never attended this kind of parties, and specifically, I've always seen the drug-related world from a technical point of view. I had 10 years of experience in analysis, but I never seen this scenario from the user's point of view. First of all, with Elisa, we have decided what instrumentation was better for our purpose. We chose a portable Raman spectrometer that is high humidity and vibration resistant, ideal for on-field work. It works in a not destructive way, so we don't consume substances, powder or crystals from users. This instrument performs full analysis in about 2 minutes, so really fast analysis. During this time, there is a counseling time where user can answer to a few questions in an anonymous way, obviously. The identification of the instruments was qualitative and based on a match between the collected IR spectrum and an updated library containing hundreds of the latest known NPS and common drug spectra. We continued to perform colorimetric analysis as well for those substances that cannot be analyzed with Raman technique like blotter. When the analysis is inconclusive, so instrument doesn't recognize the substance, we ask few milligrams of substances to perform a deeper analysis with the lab instrumentation. Users are usually agree with this. I will not show results of these 2 projects, but you can find some of them in the new Neutravel platform, if I'm not wrong. In about 5% of the cases, drug checking revealed a different substance respect to what the user thought to have about. In those cases, more than 50% of users declare that will not take the drug. In many of these cases, we have found fake drugs, mainly cutting agents, but sometimes we have faced up NPS. So we have informed with alerts the early warning system. All the times we have got held a few milligrams of substances for confirmation lab analysis with mass spectrometry. This step is a crucial shortcut in our research activity because we have real powder of this NPS, and we can manage it and analyze it and do many things. During the years, we have found many dangerous substances. The latest, for instance, have been 4F MDMB Binaca, sold as MDMA, and a mixture of DOC, 25B Embome, 25I Embome, and 25E Embome, sold as mescaline. Some personal consideration. I complete my speech talking about a doubt that initially arose me spontaneously, the apparent incoherence between my work and these projects. Because from Monday to Friday, my work is usually linked with crime repressive measures for the purpose of justice, while drug checking projects during the weekend make me a jump on the other side of the context. I asked myself if I would become a schizophrenic, but it didn't happen. And this is because I don't think there is incompatibility between the 2 tasks. Because in each of the 2, the aim of a chemist like me is to pursue a result. And analytical result has no prejudices, has no stigma, has no intention other than to reveal itself. In Italy, the theme of harm reduction risks to be treated like a common drug-related topic, And the typical result of this Italian behavior could be a mark as a political argument. But when we talk about collective health, there should not be policy contaminations. And for this here, unlike, as we can see in other countries, an official Pacific cooperation with other forces and law in general seems still hard to be reached. But I hope it happens. So Elisa, I have finished, and thanks for the attention.
Thank you, Fabrizio, for your speech. And I would like to take the last sentence that you said to ask you one question. How do you see the future of drug tracking in Italy? Now it is in the law in the Piedmont region, but you know our health system is regionally based, it is not nationally based. How do you see, especially from your colleagues, your chemist colleagues' point of view, the future of this service?
I am optimistic because when during BAUM's project we around all the regions sometimes, and we met just curiosity and people that are very happy to can analyze their substances. About the health system at the regional level is not the best period of my nation. We saw how confused it can be, and it's hard, but I hope in a few years that could be an argument touched by institutions as in Piedmont happened. So optimistic point of view, yeah.
Cool. Then we have another question about networks to stay on the topic of this conference. Do you think that sooner or later there will be the possibility to connect also with other stakeholders? Because with the BAUM's project, as a social worker, as a social organization, we extended our network involving a forensic lab and involving chemists. Do you think that in the future, sooner or later, there will be the possibility to extend this network more? And I don't know, to have the university or also our other forensic lab or law enforcement agency? And what about this?
Yeah, it will happen very soon. For what concerns university, we're going to start thesis work about this. I'm trying to pull an innocent student in this crazy world. And so for university, I'm optimistic. For the police, I don't think will be so easy, as you know, but probably will be crucial enter and go inside the legal events, the big festival that every summer, every year there is in Italy, and stop to moving just in a illegal contest, step by step. Yeah.
Okay, and I have a last question for you that is more like a personal question, also considering that we are going to have an innocent student with us in illegal raves or in psytrance events or in the mood and in the natural settings we work. So what is the thing that you like most when you go on fields with us, and what is the thing that you like less?
Okay, it's the same answer. Contact with people and sometimes music. That are the best things and the worst things. No, okay, no, contact with people was an amazing experience for me. That I'm a lab mouse and I never see people in my life. No, was amazing. Was really constructive. I know a new point. I knew a new point of view about drug consumption. I have no stigma, but I just don't think about some themes in my life. It was amazing. I knew crazy people. I made crazy dialogues. It was fantastic. And the thing that I dislike, maybe the extremely cold sometimes during the night, but you provide me a car where I put myself and my instrument to perform analysis. So thanks to you. There's no bad things in my experience with drug checking.
Cool. Wonderful. So, thank you, Fabrizio. Thank you also for staying on time and stay with us, because at the end of the session we will have a last question for all the speakers involved.
Okay, I try.
Ciao.
Ciao Elisa.
Ciao. Ci vediamo dopo.
Good afternoon.
Bye. Okay. So now we continue our journey in drug checking service, moving to another South European country, that is Spain. And we go to Barcelona. And I'm very, very happy and pleased to introduce you Mireia Ventura, that he is the drug checking manager of energy control and also the manager of the TEDI network. And I give the floor to you, Mireia, and to your story. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Elisa, for organizing this meeting with all the group of New Travel and for inviting us, trying to explain a little bit which is our story and how we began to run projects as energy control and also our drug checking service. So I will try to share my screen. Yeah, a moment. I think that 2 seconds and will work. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, and the one below is working.
Yeah, I confirm you that everything is working. No.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Working
Okay.
again. Great.
So today I would like to explain a little bit of our story. Energy Control was born in 1997, and since then we had at this moment 4 different headquarters in Barcelona, Catalonia, also in Balearic Islands, also in Madrid, and in the south of Spain, in Andalusia. And our beginnings, where we are coming from the Bacalao, no, La Ruta del Bacalao, which was really the electronic music that was at the 19th and mainly at the late 19th. Finally, we had we were returning from a dictatorialship, a dictatorial government, and people were really looking forward to go out, to live, to feel alive, to feel pleasure. And then ecstasy and this type of music was really the things that they were looking at this moment. So at this moment, they were playing a lot with drugs. At this moment, they didn't have any information about these synthetic drugs. And the problem was coming when these synthetic drugs were adulterated, and also when this type of routes were taking like more than 74 hours. They were also using cars, they were using a lot of things that were beginning a lot of accidents and a lot of things that several persons decide that, come on, now it's time to try to go directly to these places. And what you can see, this comic on the right side, is the first material that we did with energy control, trying to be as much as we can as according to this target group. So at this moment when adulterations were coming with a substance is called PMA, and some pills were adulterated with PMA, and at this moment this was our first drug checking service. It was with a Marquis test in a small rave, and thanks to the collaboration with persons from Medicine Zumon, we were learning how to implement this type of a strategy. At this moment, this was working because it was really affordable. The person who is next to Granier, I think that is the name is Josep Rovira, who was the founder of Energy Control. He was asking for permission, informing about what we were going to do, because in Spain it's not illegal drug checking, but neither legal. But until today, we were informing, asking for permission, and applying this type of strategies. At this time, this was very useful because we could detect only with a drop if this pill had ecstasy or didn't have it. And by this way, we were really reaching this target group, and they trust us as we were the persons who were saving their lives, because when people were falling on the dance floor, this was quite dramatic for this population. No? We can remember that we were just after this dictatorial government, and we were really looking forward, these persons were really looking forward to have joy and pleasure instead of this type of experiences. So in 2015, the type of techniques that we were performing on site were improving. We were using more than Marquis test. However, we don't have the same budget or the same resources that other European countries, so we cannot travel with an HPLC. Luckily, we have today other persons from TERI that will explain how this works. But at this moment, in 2015, also we were using this type of strategies because another pill, which a substance that is the sister of this PMA, called PMMA, was also appearing with inside the pills of MDMA. So again, with another technique, doing on site, we could detect and we could be sure if these pills were having this substance or not. Later on, we were also developing our drop-in centers. At these places, people are coming without having the favorite DJ playing in 1 hour, so they are coming with a lot of time. And then here we have the time to talk, and to not only talk about the substance in general, we can also talk about the specific substance that they are going to use. As example, it's not the same to talk about cocaine in general or trends of cocaine, talking about the cocaine that you are going to use that is tainted or is adulterated with this substance, that this substance mixed with alcohol has these interactions or has these problems. At this point, people are really open, and as they are concerned about the drugs are in a legal market, they are using these services, and we are using also this contact to talk openly about drugs. And for most of them, this could be the first time that they are talking openly about drugs without the stigma, without the things that was explaining Fabrizio. And at this point is when we can also detect these early problematic uses, and also following these persons and giving some space to talk about the problems that they are noticing with these consumers. So since then, since the beginning, we were analyzing more than 30,000 of samples. And if we analyze the evolution of the type of samples that we are analyzing, we can see as mainly we are analyzing MDMA, which is representing the blue color, and cocaine and amphetamine, which are the substances that are more used at recreational settings. And also another interesting thing is that, for example, for MPS, these new substances that are on the market, the thing that we are detecting is that the use of MPS, at least in Spain, is not something really frequent and is something more related to the availability of other drugs. For example, we can see as in 2010, from 2010 to 2014 and 15, we have more demands of this NPS. And if we analyze a little bit and we are crossing some data, we can see that if we compare the number of analyses that we have received as analysis of MPS, so a person that wants to analyze, I would say, 4 meg, for example, and if we compare this analysis with the amount of MDMA inside pills, we can see that the more MDMA we have, the less interest on NPS we have from our users. So what we can detect is that at least in Spain, these MPS are covering like a gap that can leave other most common substances such as MDMA, LSD, or this type of substances. Related to NPS, it's very important to monitor what is inside, because I would like to give you 2 examples of the analysis of what is called these products legal highs. If we can see this legal high that has a brand and is called Charge Plus, this product, they inform you that it has vitamins, magnesium, creatine. However, if we analyze these substances, here are several analyses that we were doing of the same product with the same brand, but the composition was changing during years. The change of this composition is totally linked and related with the fiscalization of the substances. So when a substance is fiscalized, they are changing the formulation of these products and they are adding other new substances, even newer, that we cannot know which are the effects. So the problem, one of the big problems of this NPS is that most of them are so new that we don't have studies with animals and even less with humans. And when they are fiscalized or they are under regulation, then the new ones that are appearing, we have even less information about these substances. Also, we detect an important mislabeling. This was by mistake, but we detect one time, this was in 2009, how a 2CB fly substance, this was called and sent as research chemical, that normally doesn't have the marketing that is behind this product that I presented before, these legal highs. However, sometimes they can have some mistakes, and this was a warning that we were launching thanks to Aerowit worldwide, because finally, instead of 2CB fly, the substance was bromo dragonfly, substance 20 times more potent, and several deaths were occurring due to this issue. It was interesting to see that once we were performing the analysis and we were sending and spreading all these results thanks to a platform as Aerowit to all the world, the death stopped. So this also shows us that these communities are really well informed and well connected. And this helped us, and also thanks to our colleague Dr. X, who was already inside the deep web, this helped us to develop what is called for us our Energy Control International Drug Checking Service. Our Dr. X, I don't know if everybody knows, him, but he was offering information about risk and information about health inside one of the most famous deep web forums, Silk Road. And he was also a known person and respected person inside these forums. And it was him who was informing to these forums that we would test substance from abroad, because we were receiving a lot of demands from people from the United States and from other countries that at these places is not possible to analyze, and they were asking us for this possibility. We are running the International Drug Checking Service since 2014, and since then we were contacting with more than 90 different countries, and the most request countries are the United States, UK, and also other countries. And this graph of the left, right, I showed the 10 most countries that are asking for this type of service. Also, when Elisa was talking about this, when several drug checking services are working together, then we can share our knowledge, our practice, we can share our data, and also we can work together trying to find out which are the trends and how things are working inside Europe. The TENEDI network, which was founded in 2011, at this moment it has 19 different organizations inside, and it has organizations that are really well known and organizations with more than 30 years of experience, like the ones that are presenting just after me. But also we have some other new projects, and we are also trying to support these new projects in terms of having the best data and the best methods to offer this type of strategy that is so useful in terms of drug checking. Thanks to the collaboration of TEDI, when we are collecting all these results and we are collecting all this data, and thanks also to the support of the MCDA, at this moment, the data from the fieldwork, data from drug checking services is published in the European Drug Report of the MCDA and is published in their website and is diffused around their networks. So, to conclude, the two most important things that we have learned from drug checking services are that these drug checking services are letting us to become a reference in drug reduction for people who use drugs. It also helps us to contact with these people, to talk openly about drugs and to help them to use these drugs in a less risky way. And thanks to all the samples that we are analyzing and the network that we are doing and sharing of data, we can know the dynamics of the drug markets and adjust our response to them. Because prevention needs information, and the information of how drug markets are is what is helping us to develop these risk reduction measures. For example, once we are seeing that the amount of MDMA is so high at this moment, we need to readapt our message to the amount of MDMA that we know that we have in the market. And the same would happen with some adulterants, specific adulterants, or other things that we were finding throughout these years. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Mireia, and thank you for the story that you told us, starting from the beginning of your drug checking service, and explaining us how this service built in your country. Well, we have some questions for you. And the first question I would like to ask is about your international drug checking service. So, are there some countries or a country that is sending to your drug checking international service a lot of sample or the majority of the sample? And if yes, how do you explain this?
Yeah, the country that is sending more samples to analyze is the United States. This has a of course, the United States is very big, but also it's a country with a lot of story of prevention, but in another way. And so people are concerned about the drugs, but the facilities that they have in terms of drug checking, these are scarce. And this was very evident, with the problem of this fentanyl crisis that they had. So finally, something that the United States are learning and also are using Europe as example is how prevention needs to be applied. And more, we can find that they are now implementing the safer injection rooms, and they are trying to get the prevention there. But what it shows to us is that people have a lot of interest, have a lot of concerns about drugs. However, they don't have the facilities, they don't have the possibilities to analyze themselves. And for this reason, they are using our service.
Okay. And then another question, always related to your international drug checking service. Since in Italy, many people from other regions are asking us, but how can I do to analyze a sample? We are not allowed to receive samples by mail. And so most of times we say, okay, send it to energy control and to their international drug checking service. But a question that comes is, okay, but how can my privacy be guaranteed if I send a sample? How can I be anonymous? And so how do you guarantee the privacy of the people that send you the sample?
Yeah, we are really guaranteeing the privacy and anonymity of these persons. The way they are sending us a sample is using an online shop we have, and also they can use cryptocurrencies as bitcoins or other ones that can also assure this anonymity. And with this type of service, we are always also asking about little amounts of drugs, because in Spain we have this permission that for research purposes, low amount of drugs are able to run, I would say. So we don't have really big problems because the amount of drugs that we use is really low. And in Spain, we have these possibilities. So of course, if you are sending an envelope with a lot of amount of drug inside, it will be more problematic that if you are sending this small dose that we need to test. And inside this envelope, there is no data that can relate this sample with you because the purchase was done with the online shop, which is anonymous.
Thank you. So Italians, send and don't worry for your privacy because it's fully guaranteed. Then I have a last question. Drug checking services sometimes are considered not evidence-based, or there's something to explore more about the impact a drug checking service can have, because when we are in fields, we see the impact of the service, and we have a few data also demonstrating the impact, but just in that parties. And so I would like to ask you if there are any strategies, what are the TEDI current plans to have an evidence on the impact of drug checking services and demonstrate that these services are important for the health of the person.
So the persons who are running drug checking services, the persons who are working directly with people who are using drugs, the persons who are working directly on the field, know perfectly that this type of strategies are working perfectly. However, this type of strategies sometimes are quite tricky in terms of that it seems that if you are giving the information that this substance is not adulterated, that the person can manage strange with this information. This is not the thing that we thought, because when you are giving the information about that this substance is adulterated, the rate of people that are discarding the substance is super high. So finally, to discard, I would say, to remove all these potentially toxic substances from the market, from the field, from the rave party, drug checking services are super efficient. However, with Teddy, what we are trying is also to show, after that we show that this data is important in terms of monitoring, and the thing that the MCDA is paying to the network for providing this data. This means that this is useful in terms of monitoring. However, in terms of the impact of our interventions to directly the people who are using drugs, this is something that still we need to prove. And we are asking for example, this January, we asked for an European project in this direction, trying to, with the idea to, again, doing networking and doing together the collection of data with the same methods, with the same, because also the problem was that each country was doing as they could. But at this moment, we feel not enough prepared and enough convinced that it's time to work together also on this direction, not only on monitoring, also in the direction to show and to find the evidence base that these type of services are not promoting drug use and that are giving other type of strategies to people who are using drugs, apart of discard the potentially toxic products that we already show that this is something that is doing a drug checking service.
Okay, thank you so much, Mireia. And I would like just to highlight how network are important, because in network we can work together and we put all our efforts together to be more effective and also more active to reach the objective that we have. So thank you very much, Mireia, for your presentation. And I also ask you to stay with us, because at the end we have a last question, and we will be all together in the screen, virtually in the screen. I'm a little bit sad about this, because it is very, very strange to see you in this way. I was used to stay with you in a real conference. I really hope that we can do this soon again all together. And so thank you. Now
I'm going to, I will keep here.
Okay. And now we move to the north of Europe, and I'm happy and pleased to introduce Daan van der Gouwe. I hope I named your name correctly, and cool. Daan is a co-worker at DIMS, that is the National System of Drug Tracking, and he is also a researcher at the Trimbos Institute. So, Daan, the floor is yours, and tell us your story.
Okay, good afternoon from Rotterdam, and Elisa, thank you very much for inviting me. The last time we actually saw was, I just remembered, was early March, when COVID and Corona was just on the verge of starting. So it's good to see you now on the other side of the epidemic or the pandemic, and let's hope things will soon get for the better. I'd like to talk to you about the drugs information and monitoring system in the Netherlands, and I will try to share the screen, so it's easy, I think. I think it is okay. Yes, sharing.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, here is the.
Perfect.
I had a mind. Okay. I'll talk to you about DIMS, about the drugs information and monitoring system.
Sorry, can you just extend your presentation to have it in a full screen so we can see it fully in the window?
Yes, like this?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. DIMS, the Drugs Information Monitoring System, is a national system of testing services throughout our small country. We have a nationwide coverage of samples, and we are being paid for by our Ministry of Health for so long, for over 25 years or so. We are very happy for that, obviously. Although drug checking in itself is not very new, as you can see, there are even our colleagues from Energy Control and also Check It, that will speak in a minute. They run services for over 20 years, and so it's not really a new phenomenon. It's really quite old, but it's still expanding, which is a good thing. More and more countries actually see the benefits of drug checking in any shape or form, which is good. Our service started out actually already in the 70s and the 60s, but at that time it was really a bit dodgy and a bit semi-legal. And by the end of the 80s or mid or end 80s, we had a safe house campaign, as it was called at that time, and then there was a simple marquise test at some festivals and parties, but it was very infrequently done. And since 1992, we organized ourselves on a more structural basis. As I said, we have a national coverage now. The DIMS office, which is where I work, is in Utrecht, in the center of the country. We coordinate drug checking in our country, and we help set up services throughout our country. So we have 33 outlets at the moment, 33 locations where people can have their drugs submitted for analysis. We use, they use a simple marquise reagent plus a determination list that we compile every week of the 50 or so most common tablets at the market at the moment. Now with COVID, we only have a few tablets left of that list. We also run a database of more than 20 years of all kinds of characteristics of those tablets. And you also use the infrared and other techniques. The lab, so we send samples to a lab. We do not analyze them ourselves, and they include GCMS and LCDAD. It's good for you to know that we are different from many other drug checking services, is that we used to do on-site checking at festivals, but this was discontinued in 2002 as a sort of, the government forbid us to further do this kind of job on site. And since then we used office-based. So people have to plan their drug use, they have to send in samples of submit samples before, well, let's say a week before they're actually going to take those drugs. The service is discreet and anonymous, like Energy Control and many others. We do not collect data, personal data from people submitting samples. They get a number, and we collect some data for our own analysis. No age, but for instance, male or female. Why they have bought the sample, why they want it analyzed, and if they have used it, and what were the effects, things like that. It's free of charge usually, and it's important for those who set up services that we made an agreement with the public prosecution, so basically with the Ministry of Justice, that allows us to do the work that we do, because we work with illicit drugs, so we need permission to have those drugs on us and to work with them, and we have it. It's really essential. Without those waivers, we couldn't simply work. And we are now in the Netherlands. Our work is a prominent part of risk assessments of new drugs. So what do? We examine the content, we look at the associated health risks, and we analyze trends. So we can analyze trends that date back for more than 20 years already. So we monitor the market by offering consumers the possibility to have their drugs tested. We use those data for education, prevention, and policy interventions. The testing facilities serve a major educational purpose and provide information on effects and risk of drugs. We always say, for us working at those facilities, The drug checking itself is interesting, but not the most important part. The most important part is to have the consultative talks with those who have the drugs, who want to have the drugs analyzed, just to talk through the risks and effects of the drugs they are about to use. Very important and often neglected. And occasionally we warn on a national level, less infrequently we warn on a regional level, and sometimes also on a local level, but the number of warnings is really limited. This is how it works. Weekly consulting hours, so they're fixed sites. You have to go somewhere physically, you have to go to a place and submit your sample. It's anonymous, discreet. If the sample can be determined, the composition is passed on directly by using, for instance, the determination list. If not, it will be sent to a laboratory, and then it takes a couple of days for further analysis. And then generally a week later, the drugs have been analyzed. We get results back every Thursday, and thus the results are communicated in such that the one submitting the sample get a small card with information about the substance that was submitted, and also a unique number. So they called up and they said, well, last week I was in the service, in your service, and I had this sample of ketamine, number this and this, analyzed, please give me the results. And then the results will be communicated via phone, never in written form or through WhatsApp or things like that, because we believe it's a personal communication between the tester and the one who has submitted the samples. Because there's such a huge variety in drugs and in concentration of active compounds in substances, we are not in favor of sharing our results online, because it may give false communication, false results. As I said, sometimes the result is so disturbing then that a warning or a red alert is issued. But the last red alert that we issued dates back from 6 years or so. Sorry, it was actually a pink Superman tablet that contained no MDMA at all, but a huge amount of PMMA, a lethal dosage actually. In order to make it a bit more interesting for also my colleagues from the other services that have heard this talk probably a number of times already, I will give you some highlights of 2019. So now we have a nationwide coverage. We had actually 18,000 visitors last year, which was really huge, and this number actually further increased during the first 3 months of this year. This also led to a record number of samples that has been analyzed. Similar to energy control, the majority of the substances that are being submitted to our services contains ecstasy tablets, 6% also MDMA powder, and further we have cocaine. We have a rise in 2CB, and as in Spain, for instance, but also in much more countries, you can see that the number of NPS, new psychiatric substances, that are being submitted is really low, and it's actually getting lower and lower year by year. So also in the Netherlands, we do not see actually a huge popularity of NPS. And actually, we didn't look at the strength of ecstasy tablets as Mireia just showed us. It might be interesting to do a similar search, because it may be the same thing, that whenever the strength of ecstasy is rising, the interest in NPS is decreasing. It's possible. Here you can see that, and this is really worrying actually, is that still the average amount of ecstasy, MDMA and ecstasy tablets is increasing. Last year it was 172 milligrams of MDMA. This is in base, so the salt is even higher. It's around 200, I guess, but it's really, really, really very strong. And you can see that the proportion of tablets over 210 milligrams of MDMA is increasing year by year. But luckily, to mention something positive about this graph, is that the proportion of more or less moderately, what we call now moderately, dosed tablets is increasing. So this the yellow, or what is it, orange color. So it's between 141 and 175 milligrams. So this proportion is increasing, which in itself is actually good news on a very dark page, basically. Cocaine, the strength is going up again. So it has risen now to almost 70% purity. The average cocaine concentration. We have seen that you may have known that levamisole used to be in cocaine quite often. It's decreasing actually for some time, and it's really it's good that it's decreasing for some time. I thought I'd add a slide about ketamine, because ketamine is becoming more and more popular in our country. The use of ketamine in powder form. And also 5% of all the samples submitted contained was about ketamine. The price per gram in powder is almost 25 euros, which is quite high if you compare that to, for instance, an ecstasy tablet, which is around 4 euros a tablet. And you can see that the purity is really high. It's fairly high. It's around 77% ketamine. But what we also see is that it sometimes contains really high dosages of levamisole. So less in cocaine, but probably more in ketamine. LSD, it's also becoming more and more popular, and maybe also now in COVID times we may have seen an increase in people using hallucinogen drugs. We see here that the average price per bottle is almost 6 euros, and it's usually very. It's the average amount. The average amount of LSD in bottles has risen sharply, as you can see, to over 93 kilograms in 2019. MPS, we always have the discussion in DIMS about MPS, what to consider MPS and what not. So we decided in the end to follow the EMCDDA classification. So we included 4FA and GHB and 2CB and so on and so on. Then you see a huge rise, but the gray one is actually the one who's most interesting to us. Is actually what we call MPS, those new drugs. You can see it has increased a little bit, but the amount is still very low if you compare that to, for instance, 2CB or any other substance. 4FA was actually interesting maybe to you, is that was the first and only real MPS, so to speak, that gained ground in the Netherlands for a number of years. You can see, so it's the green line. We saw it for the first time in 2011. We believe it was a replacement. People use it as a replacement, as a substitute for the strong ecstasy at that time. And it was legal. And they also thought, well, it's legal, so we don't know much about it. So probably it's innocent. It's innocent drug. But then in 2015 and especially in 2016, we saw a number of an increase in the number of 4FA related health incidents, even deaths occurred while people were using just a normal dose. And then it was forbidden in 2017. And you can see a decrease afterwards. Now 4FA usually contains no 4FA, but 4-FMA. These are the 50 most common NPS at the moment. So methadone, not very special. Especially maybe 1P LSD. It's also really gaining ground at the moment, and the other ones are very old already, although we still consider them MPS. And finally, we have some graphs about the online purchases. It was interesting to see actually that in 2019 the proportion of online bought samples decreased significantly. So how do we know this? We ask when people submit a sample, we always ask, where did you buy it? And usually they would name a geographical area. But since a number of years, they also said, well, I bought it online. Now our staff is trained to ask further when they say, well, I bought it online or on the internet. We train them to say, well, okay, where online did you buy it? And so we can make a division between web shops, so it's Google indexed shops, or dark web, or otherwise. And we have seen that the dark web was increasing, but it's still really very, very low. Here you can see that that it gone down actually. And this is something that we have to address a bit, this unknown. It means that the testers, our staff, have not done their work too well, too good, because they could have asked, where did you buy it online? But they failed to do so, sadly. So to conclude, not that any of this has been said in my presentation, but I want to say it anyway. We believe that drug checking is an effective tool, first to monitor the market in illicit drugs. As you have seen before, we have gathered over the years a lot of information about what's on the market and differences in strength and so on, and pollutions and adulterations, and we are able to warn if there's a need to. And it's also a good tool to inform potential users about the risks and effects of drugs. This consultative talks that go hand in hand with giving back the results of the analysis is very important. By doing so, we are able to warn potential users about extra dangerous drugs present on the market. And so we believe that drug checking is about risk minimization, harm reduction, but not about harm avoidance, because there's, as with anything in the world, also when you use drugs, you take several risks. And to finally conclude is that the reason why our service exists for so long is probably not that it's an effective harm reduction tool, which it is, but that is also an effective tool to monitor the market. And this is the reason probably why we are being subsidized for so many years by our government. I think this is it for the moment. We have here our websites, the app. We have a Red Alert app actually that you can download from the shops where it's offered. We have a Twitter service and we have an email address. And that's it. Thank you for the moment.
Thanks to you, Daan. And I think that with your presentation, you showed the potency of a national system of drug checking and the level of monitoring that you can have about the drugs circulating in your territory and in your state. And I really hope that even not at national level, but almost at regional level, we can do in the future something like this, or just having more than one formal drug checking point in our
But one is a start.
Yeah, step by step, as Fabrizio said. But yeah, considering what I said now, I have a question. So we guess that not everyone, even in the Netherlands, immediately agreed with a national drug checking system. And at least we guess that some people were opposing to the fact of having drug checking facilities all around the territory. If you had this kind of a position, how did you face it?
Of course, we had this opposition, and the same opposition as we had with other harm reduction facilities, such as drug consumption rooms, heroin-assisted treatment, you name it, we had it. But it's, we are a pragmatic country. Our policy is based on pragmatism. If it works, nobody cares, basically. So we are not that, we do not have this religious background as many other countries, especially in the south of Europe. So we're a different sort of society. If it works, okay. So we had drug consumption rooms everywhere. People, the neighbors were shouting, no, we don't want that in our neighbor. But once it was installed and people saw the benefits, namely people didn't use in the streets, no needles in the streets and so on, they said, okay, let's do it. The same more or less with drug checking. When it started, it's like in any country, people said, well, you're promoting drug use and so on and so on, but we didn't. And it was also, it takes a long breath to just show what you're doing, to be open and transparent in what you do and how you do it, and again to also to stress the fact that you are monitoring markets. You're just monitoring drug markets, and alongside you give some very important tips and advices to potential users. The sad thing, though, is that what sometimes happens is that first people have to die, sadly, and then others will step up. I name this specifically because it happens sometimes that young people die, and then before their parents were very, very much against it, and afterwards usually they say, "Oh, it's very important to have a drug checking services in our country," or "She should have gone there because it's so important because it could have saved our daughter's life," and so on. It's a bit dramatic, but in the end, it works like that. You can save lives by knowing this, what you're about to swallow, and if it's really bad stuff, what you're about to swallow. We also believe, and evidence shows that people are intending not to take that specific sample, and therefore you contribute to the health of the society.
Thank you. And yes, hopefully it is better to arrive before that some people die. And so I really hope that also our institution can think about this and try to prevent in some way possible death. And another question that I have for you, since DIMS is a governmental system and it is very spread on the Netherlands, are you connected with drug service provider, and did you ever send to a drug service or to a drug service provider people that has risky consumption patterns? So during the counseling you detect that person is having risky consumption patterns, and so you send it directly to the network.
Yes, okay, to be sure, we are an NGO, so we are a large NGO, but we're an NGO, and we coordinate drug checking in the Netherlands. So we work closely together with the drug checking services throughout the country. We train them, and we give them all kinds of information about new drugs and things happening on the market. So yes, we are always in contact with them. And when people are suspicious of a very risky drug taking behavior, for instance, they come to the service, they have this short link to treatment facilities, because most of the services, they are attached to a larger drug service that also includes treatment. So it's very easy for the ones who's doing the analysis or doing the talk with the drug user, and if he sees that the person is maybe taking a bit too much of something or acting strange, and sometimes people reoccur, so they re-enter the visit. They know each other because they have visited the center many times already, and if they see that the person is deteriorating in its health, they may easily be referred to treatment, and this is what happens. So actually, we see it as a sort of a first step, also for those who overdo their drug use, so to say, that they can be referred easily to any kind of treatment they need.
Okay. And I have a last question, because sometime here in Neo Travel we are discussing the possibility to have an info point or a stationary drug checking service. And I think that is challenging us is what about if a parent come and ask us to test the drug to detect if his son or his daughter is taking drugs. Have you ever had to deal with something like this? And if yes, how did you manage this situation?
It happens quite frequently that parents visit our services, and the typical situation is that, okay, mother cleans the house on a Monday morning, finds in the pocket of the trouser of boy or girl, son or daughter, a small package and with some powder or a tablet or of something. Then they immediately ask, they scared a lot, and then they probably would visit our service for analysis? We usually say no, because we only check for potential consumers. They don't like that. But then what we also have, and I've been working there as well, is that we have this national info line of, drugs info line, where we always refer people to. Because the thing is, when parents are like this, in this kind of state, they, it makes sense that they said, well, we want to know for sure if our son or daughter is using drugs. We would say, no, working at the drugs helpline, okay, but instead of checking the substance or checking the urine of your son or daughter, why not talking to them just in an open, normal conversation, not in a offensive way, but just, okay, I think, I found this in your pocket. It's powder. I'm not sure what it is. It could be baking powder, but I don't think so. But I've never seen you baking in the kitchen. So what is it? And just on this level, try to communicate. And this is much more helpful, because if you don't do that, and if you have your son or daughter analyzed urine, for instance, or also the sample, and it is a drug, then you may lose the confidence and the confidence of your child. So it's never a good thing to do so. And but of course it's tricky, because sometimes these parents, they're quite desperate. But basically, this is not what the service is for. But it could depend from country to country, because I know that some other countries they do that, but we usually or almost never do this.
Yeah. Also in Italy, we had something like this, not with the drug checking, but with other kind of services. And I would like to say, also taking the occasion of the day we are living in today, that is the support, don't punish. Support, don't punish. Don't try to control or to punish your child, your kids, but just try to talk with them and to understand why.
Yes. And also, what we always say is that, of course, suppose that your son is using drugs, or your daughter is using some drugs. In most cases, they just experiment and they just do it for some time. Then they get bored, they get a girlfriend, a boyfriend, work, whatever, they go traveling, and then they lose interest. This is the common feature, basically. Only a few continue their drug use. So it's not saying, well, it doesn't matter, just do what you want to do, but be open and be also clear about the facts. Most people, when they use drugs, they just use it for a specific period of time, and then they move along with their life.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing us your national system of drug checking, and for also giving us this light about how to treat a situation, how to manage a situation when your child is using drugs.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Just try to understand and support. Don't punish.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stay with us, because we have again a last question for you all. Now we move to the center of Europe. We go in Austria, exactly in Vienna. And I'm very happy and pleased to introduce you Anton Luf and Alexandra Karden from Check It, Vienna. Anton is the head of Check It. He's a pharmacist and he works at the Medical University of Vienna. And Alexandra, she's a psychologist working in research and evaluation at Check It, and also for addiction services in Vienna. So welcome, and the floor is yours. Tell us your story about your mobile unit of drug checking.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for the invitation to this conference. And thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, we try to share the screen now in order to present our story.
There's a button in the bottom of the page.
Can you see it?
Share screen. Let me ask the director.
Okay,
Can
okay,
we
sure.
presentation? No. Perhaps you have to confirm the sharing.
Okay.
So to click the button, share or confirm, something like this.
Confirm audio.
Okay, the presentation is coming. Just open it in a full window on your computer.
Perfect.
Perfect. Great.
Does it work?
Everything is working well. Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So, as you have already introduced, my name is Alexandra Karden. I work as a psychologist for the addiction services of Vienna, and Anton Luf is the head of Check It Laboratory at the Medical University of Vienna. In order to tell you our story, we want to give you a broader picture of our whole organization. And as you can see here, the Addiction Services Vienna include a lot of different services. And among these services, there is also Check It, which belongs to the prevention part, along with Party Fit and Rauschzeit, which are two other services focusing more on alcohol prevention in recreational, but also in party settings. We are a local government organization funded by the city of Vienna, but also to a minor extent by the Federal Ministry of Austria, the Federal Ministry of Labor, Social Affairs, Health and Consumer Protection, as it's called by now. And we are a scientific collaboration of the Medical University of Vienna and the Addiction Services of Vienna. Yeah, and now Anton Luf will give you a little bit of the history of how Check It started in 1997, and we move a little bit forward to the present, and then tell you a little bit of the status quo.
Okay, thank you. Thank you also from my side for inviting us. It's nice to not see you, but see you at the same time. I hope we'll meet in person again quite soon. So, as Alex already said, the mobile drug checking service Check It started in 1997 in Vienna, and the most fun part in putting these slides together was looking through old pictures, and here on this picture you can see a guy in the back of a truck, and this is Professor Rainer Schmid. He is one of the founding fathers of Check It. And he has been working at the medical university almost all his adult career life, let's say. And here he's sitting inside of a truck, approximately 1997. I'm sorry, I can't really tell if the pictures are specifically from that year, but from the equipment I can tell it's approximately that time. And working at the medical university, he was able to borrow the instruments to analyze substances online. And as it was already stated by Mireia before, it was that mobile drug checking was seemingly necessary because people were taking recreational drugs on big festivals, or not festivals, was called rave parties back then. And this was quite a new phenomenon in Vienna. So it was decided to try mobile drug checking in Vienna. And you saw a truck in the picture before, and here you can see how it was back then. It was 3 or 4, I think, big flight cases which contained the HPLCs, 4 in total it was at some point, to analyze the samples on site. So you can imagine you actually needed a truck to get those things on site, onto a festival site. And if you have wheels below, it looks quite easy. But this is also another way of how things can happen, and people like the staff that were working for the drug checking actually had to adapt quite a lot. So here you see a little bit of the heart of what was in there in those flight cases, and this is how it looked. A lot of cables. It still looks like a lot of cables nowadays, but what I want to highlight with this was that, or maybe you can't really tell in that picture specifically, but there were a lot of people in the laboratory involved in the analysis. Sometimes over 10 people had to work in the laboratory to analyze the samples, and so there were many more people from the laboratory than from the psychosocial staff. And nowadays it's actually the opposite. So as the scene is evolving and the drug market is evolving, also the project was evolving. By the way, this is the information, or the photo love story that I'm showing to you right now is something that is secondhand information. I was not there in the beginning. I wish I was, but I was maybe not, obviously, but I was too young back then. But I hope I'm getting the timeline straight. So one of the major accomplishments, or one of the major milestones that Checkit had from the mobile drug checking point of view was that approximately in 2007 they got a mobile laboratory truck, which is more like a camping van that was fitted for the purpose for having a laboratory in there. And already back then there was a full laboratory included into that laboratory bus using HPLC. And we still use the laboratory bus. I actually think that it looked a little bit fresher back then, but it was also like was quite a muddy festival that we went to. So, but still, that bus is working and it gets us from A to B. And unfortunately, I can't tell the whole story because it would take way too much time. But many funny stories. But what I want to show is that we're still mobile, even though we had to evolve our analytical techniques. And this just shows the picture of the laboratory, but this is all taken into the laboratory bus, or most of it at least. It's our HPLC MS system. We also use Maldi IT MS nowadays, and the latest member of our analytical family is the FTIR device in the right corner. Which we also, so we combine those methods together to get the best possible result in order to give a whole picture of what is contained in the substances. So I just summed up the mobile drug checking developments over the years. 1997, it was something called a remedy, which was also an HPLC system. And as the drug market got more complicated and more substances started to enter, for example, in 2006, when MCPP and the piperazines, the first MPS entering the Viennese market at least, things had to change. And as you can see, in 2012, a mass spectrometer, which is quite a sensitive and very device that can differentiate between a lot of substances, was included. And but the drug market did not get, at least in Vienna, and we know all over in Europe, did not get any less complicated, rather the opposite. It got more complicated and more substances entered the market. So we decided to add a new method to it, and it was a direct mass spectrometric approach. And now in 2020, I don't even want to read the acronyms because that's way too complicated. I just wanted to show that one key thing that you have to bear in mind when supplying or when offering mobile drug checking is that you have to adapt to the market situation or the changes in the market. And that this has to be taken into account when starting up a drug checking service. Although I have to say it was, of course, substance-wise, a lot easier back in 1997 when there was only a handful of substances on the market. And now, if you start a drug checking service now, of course, it is a lot more complicated than it was back then. So, and I've been speaking a lot about analytical techniques now. So, but one key aspect Alex is going to highlight now, and how the analysis fits into the whole scheme.
Yeah, Anton just showed and explained. Checkit went a long way to arrive to the point where we are now, and it is only effective by a close collaboration or cooperation between two elements, and these are the analytical and toxicological measures that we were focusing before. and the psychosocial interventions. And we think a picture that displays this collaboration quite well is the one shown there, where you can see on the left-hand side the bus that was on the picture before as well, the laboratory bus. On the very right-hand side, you can see a tent. This is a tent where people can go inside to submit the samples that are now transferred to the bus for the analysis. And in the middle, you can see all the interaction that is going on. So in the front, you can see a table with information, leaflets, and goodies where our psychosocial staff informs people. And on the very back, it's also a very important thing. You can see the result communication wall, where we pin up the results after they have been analyzed. So when you submit a sample, you get a number, and half an hour later, the analysis is usually done, and we pin up the analysis result on this wall. And so we can guarantee that people can get the result very anonymous, and that it's also a very attractive spot where people go to and ask our psychosocial staff for more information about the substances they see. So, and this is a good picture to sum up our integrated drug checking model, where the substance analysis is at the core, based on which we are able to give information to the people, but also advice and support. And it's also important to offer ongoing support if it's needed. And last but not least, a very important pillar is the monitoring of the drug market, because we gather a lot of information about the drugs, but also about the source of drugs or the prices and so on. So we are able to get a picture about the Viennese drug market. But what is also important in this picture is that the substance analysis is not the only thing. It is important for all the other services, but it can't be offered just by itself or alone. So here we summed up a few big milestones of CheckIt. So we introduced 1997, the mobile drug checking service that Anton just explained. In 2006, we finally got the home base, it's called, which is a drop-in shop where people can come by during the week for information, but also counseling. We also offer workshops and other things, group counselings. And finally, in 2020, this year, we were able to officially establish stationary drug checking service, which we are very proud of, and it was a lot of work finally. And yeah, we are very happy to offer it now, especially during Corona times. And
yeah, and this is not this is an extension actually, where you see the icon of a pharmacy down there. At least it's the sign of a pharmacy in Austria. And we also have connected to our stationary drug checking, a drug checking that is cooperating with pharmacies, where people can go to the pharmacies, cooperating pharmacies. There's only a handful, or actually at the moment, but okay, anyways. There are boxes installed where people who registered beforehand, anonymously of course, and also free of charge, registered for handing in their samples. They can drop in the samples there, and we're hoping to reach with both of those, like the stationary drug checking and also the drug checking in cooperation with pharmacies. We hope to reach another kind of user groups, and as we have seen with preliminary data analysis, this is probably already working, and we will evaluate this and have the information on this in a year. So, and with this, we want to conclude, and also just so you see who the people in the background are, or not in the background, actually, not just people who are working with us on all different topics are displayed here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex and Anton. We were very impressed from your presentation, especially with all the things that you were used to bring with you doing the intervention, and especially with your bus, your drug checking bus. And so the first question I have is, who drives that bus? Because, you know, in party settings, but also in cities, it is not so easy to drive a van. So if I have to imagine a drug checking mobile unit like yours, I need to plan one person for the van. And how do you manage to move that big bus?
Okay, I think I'll take this question because that's quite a funny one. I started at Check It as a civil servant. That is like if you don't want to do military, you do the opposite. I guess that's in many countries like that. But anyways, the laboratory bus already existed back then, but none of the guys in the laboratory actually did have a driver's license. So I got to drive that bus, and that was quite a challenge, I have to say, in the beginning. But you don't need a special license for that because it's basically a camping van, and you get used to it. So it's the funny thing about it is, though, that I still have the duty of driving that bus, and it's also parked in front of my apartment in Vienna. And as you know, it's quite a big thing, and my neighbors are actually not so happy about it because it's just like it's a big chunk of car just standing in the way. But more important, what you're saying is, and what is highlighting the fact that you have to be very flexible is that you have to drive the bus on festival area, and Austria is quite a rainy country sometimes. Especially, it can be rainy in the summer in the festival season, and you just have to take care of the equipment, but still have to get it on site. So this is quite a tricky thing, but so far everything has worked, and except for one moment where some electrics were burning down, we never had any troubles with it.
Importantly, we usually drive the bus to the location before the party starts, or it depends on the location. And sometimes we also have to wait until everything is finished. So there is a lot of coordination between the organizers of the event and also our event organizers, also the ticket laboratory.
Exactly.
So in order to really don't be working, like in order to not work the whole evening. But yeah, so we organize that we can get out of the event immediately when we stop and blah, blah, blah. But it is a lot of organization usually.
Yeah, and organization, and also beforehand you have to check out the area, because you can imagine those analytical devices don't like it if the bus is standing slanted or something like that. So someone really makes sure that we get a very even spot, not in the sun and everything, but sometimes it still happens. So you have to be flexible, and you get the festival live, even though you are doing laboratory work, actually.
And the security is usually guiding us the way out of the location. If we are inside the location, sometimes we are a little bit outside. So usually there's very good cooperation, right?
Okay, we have also civil servants in Neo Travel, so probably if we want to go towards this kind of drug checking service in the next call, we will insert. Okay, we want you to have the driving license for buses. Okay, and I have another question for you. So in your presentation, you said that you show your drug checking results in party settings, and how do you prevent the competition among partygoers or even dealer about what is the most potent or the most pure drug? If you ever had something like this in your intervention?
Yeah, the way we show the results, we try to make sure that it's as anonymous as possible, but also as personalized as possible. So only the person that submits the sample has the number for the analysis result. So you just see pictures or like papers with what the sample was submitted as and what was inside, and along with a personalized number. So and plus, what is very important, we don't show pictures of the sample and also no logos. So if somebody asks us, did you analyze this sample before, we say, we don't know, you have to submit it yourself. So we try to make sure that every sample is submitted especially. Yeah, but sometimes we cannot prevent people from advertising their result, of course. Like we also had people that got their analysis result tattooed on their arm. So yeah, and he presents it to us every time he is at the festival, and we are as well. So this kind of advertisement, of course, cannot be prevented completely. But nobody knows which of the results it was. So, but no, do you want to add something?
I mean, there's one point that has to be taken also into account. There is always a counseling interaction with the users or the clients actually directly, and a high dose, as we've also heard in the slides before or in the presentations before, is not always a good thing. So people also get a little bit sensitized towards the topic, and with I wouldn't call it like negative advertisement, but it can also be the start of a beginning of a counseling session with someone who has actually not been submitting a sample. So this, I think this highlights the importance of what you do with the results, and that you have very well trained psychosocial staff there who do communicate the right information based on pharmacology, toxicology, and intervention that are guided to do harm reduction.
Very last question, very briefly. What are the 3 main points that you would suggest to bear in mind when you plan a mobile drug checking?
Okay, so as we've seen before, if you start a mobile drug checking service, you saw Professor Schmidt, and he was able to take some of the analytical devices from university. So a cooperation, I think one of the key points is to have a good cooperation between an institution like a university or a forensic lab, something like that, that are actually able to analyze substances in a high scale. And you also have to have the psychosocial staff who has the information and the capacity to talk to the people in the scene. I think that is very important. That's one part. Then secondly, you have to also have a good cooperation with the stakeholders involved. May it be the festival organizers, but also ambulance and also police, of course. So everything is interconnected actually, and the tighter your net and the better the information flow is amongst that cooperation. I think the easier you make it for yourself. And one thing that I always want to point out is that the market is changing constantly, and so you have to be flexible in any way when it comes to substances, but also the age of people, of the consumers or the clients and everything. So the scene changes, the drug market changes, and I think staying flexible and trying to stay ahead of developments or at the site of developments is very important. Did I forget anything? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So networking, again, networks are important to afford everything. And thank you, Alex and Anton, for your presentation. Now I ask the director to to bring all the speakers in the screen, because I have a last question for you all. Okay, Daan. And also Mireia. So, in the last month, the world changed, and also our services changed because of a very small thing, like a virus, and a small thing was able to make us change. How did you adapt your drug checking services during this crisis, with people obliged to stay at home under a lockdown? And what strategy did you adapt? We can do. Sorry, we can.
I can do if you want.
Yeah,
as you know, we were following your steps closely, the Italian steps, and this was not the best scenario, of course. So finally, we were reacting late and slow. So we need not to forward with a strict lockdown. And then drug checking services were considered not essential services. So we were not having any permission to do anything. So finally, we decided that, okay, we could assume that recreational drug users were not using drugs, or were using less, or they could use something that was already tested, but not for people who were attending to the safer injection rooms. So finally, we decided to offer our drug checking services to this type of people, and also to readapt everything, because as we could not have access to the laboratories, that means that we could not have access to gas chromatography, to liquid chromatography. So we need to return to our TLC, thin layer chromatography, which is something that is working because it's a chromatography, and you can be sure that, okay, if I'm not detecting this, it's because I'm not identifying. And thanks to a substance that we could not identify with the TLC, we could ask for the permission to enter to the big laboratories, and then to step by step run again our services. So finally, we transform to other type of target group to also obtain very slowly and step by step again our service to our main target group, who are recreational drug users.
Well, in the Netherlands, it's more or less the same as Mireia described. When it was, I think, the 16th of March, everything was immediately closed down. You know, within an hour, I remember it was a press release on TV. It said, well, within an hour, all coffee shops close, all restaurants, all bars, everything will close. So everyone was like, oh, what's going to happen? But it was closed. And so, of course, drug checking was also closed. It was actually a very unique situation, because for the first time in, I don't know, 25, 30 years, there was no monitoring of the illicit drug markets for not even 1 week, but for, I don't know, 2.5 months in total. And then, so what was it called, an intelligent lockdown. So it was actually also not allowed. You were allowed to leave the house, but you had to do something outside, in order to be outside. And so also drug checking services were not considered essential. So we were closed down for 2.5 months. Then things started to loosen up a little bit, and services started to open again, but in a different pace. So people have and still have to make an appointment first to submit the sample. So we work with time slots now throughout the country. People have to, make an appointment, have to reserve some time for the drug checking. And even at the drug checking itself, it has to have all these corona measures. So 1.5 meter distance, and all these screens and all that stuff. And now, actually today, there was some services that said, well, can we not return to the normal situation, because the space we have is really big. We can have 10 people in any time in our services. So we are slowly getting back to where we were, but it takes some time. And last week, I think, this week, we had around 140 samples already back, and the weeks before it was 10, 20, 40. So now it's getting back into shape again. So I think in a couple of weeks we will run the usual services, but with the 1.5 meter distance criteria.
Yeah, I guess in Vienna it was quite similar situation as in the Netherlands and in Spain. So there was a complete lockdown from March to something April, May. And because we belong to this Viennese addiction services, also drug checking services were not that essential as, of course, meal exchange, outpatient clinic, substitutions, something like that. So we shifted resources to other more essential services in the beginning. But of course, drug checking is still very important, especially as drug markets were supposedly changing. So we try to adapt our stationary service in order to limit the contact to clients as much as possible. So we created an online platform where people could register their samples in advance and then bring it once a week to our service. I mean, that was the time when it was allowed to go out of the house for not the three purposes, like going shopping and other things. So it was not during the hard lockdown. Yeah, and so people could just submit their sample and we communicate the result online or via telephone or via video chat. Yeah, but now step by step we're trying to get back to normal, like to have fixed slots for people and to submit the sample personally and not via online registration, because it's important to also be in contact with the people. Yeah, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean we were lucky in some ways because we were still able to maintain the laboratory work because they did not shut down the hospital. Of course, they tried to keep it COVID free. So they were very restrictive when it came to access from people. So we could still work, but we couldn't have our civil servant, for example. And one of my actually colleague, Axel Führer, who's like always by my side when we do the drug checking, he was also not able to come in at some point. So we had quite a lot of samples, maybe in some ways different samples, but we had samples and not the manpower that we usually have. So it was we were lucky on the one hand, but if we look a little bit tired today, that may be the reason, because we just started stationary drug checking, and when we were preparing a lot, and then the crisis came, and still the sample number actually increased instead of decreased. So it has some systemic background as well, but still we saw there was a big demand for it. And we actually had the fear that we might overlook something on the drug market, or some people get who also need help, and drug checking is important. Of course, not as important as going to the doctor, maybe, but still, it's recreational drug use is part of people's lives, and in order to keep them safe in some ways, we thought we should stay on the wave and reopen the drug checking as fast as possible.
Yeah, and importantly, of course, there are no events, so there's no mobile drug checking for now, and we have to wait until events are scheduled again.
Exactly. Sorry, I forgot to mention that, because like usually we go out every month on a mobile drug checking event, but of course if there aren't any parties, we have no idea what's happening on the market also, and what the people's needs are and everything like that.
Okay, thank you. And in Italy, we simply stopped to do drug checking because we have no parties at this moment. But we are trying to discuss to change a little bit our service, and let's see what the future will be. I really hope that what you presented will be in some way integrated in our Italian services, and to try to find other ways to go on step by step. But okay, now we did the first step and we want to go to the next one. So I really thank you for your presentation. We are incredibly on time. This is very strange in generally for Italians, but yeah, we made this possible. And so thank you to every one of you. As I told, I really hope to see you in the reality and not only in a virtual setting. And thank you so much. Have a nice month and see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much to everybody. Now I switch to Italian, so I also conclude the session in my language. Thank you, Mireia, Daan, Alex, and Anton, and also to Fabrizio that had to move away. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Chiudiamo quindi qui la sessione del pomeriggio sul drug checking. Consiglio a tutti di andare a vedere i siti delle persone che oggi sono state con noi e di approfondire il modo in cui loro fanno drug checking. Ci auspichiamo che quanto hanno detto, anche se in inglese, venga recepito e in qualche modo ci si riesca anche noi a muovere verso il successivo passo, verso un'unità mobile, verso un servizio stabile, un ufficio stabile. Ringrazio tutti coloro che sono stati online con noi. Vi consiglio a tutti di andare sul nostro sito web. Da oggi Neutravel ha un sito internet, neutravel.net. All'interno del sito troverete contributi sia da parte della rete italiana che da parte della rete europea rispetto a interventi di outreach, ma anche pratiche di drug checking. Grazie a tutti, ci rivediamo in un'ora e mezza, dove avremo la sessione conclusiva del nostro evento, che parlerà di culture, per cui avremo organizzatori di eventi e assieme andremo a vedere l'importanza delle culture o delle sottoculture per quello che riguarda i contesti del divertimento. Ci rivediamo tutti quanti alle 18. Buon pomeriggio e a dopo. Problemi tecnici, adesso vi lanciamo anche il video di chiusura, ma con 2 computer ogni tanto le cose si incastrano.
Il progetto Neutravel nasce da una partnership tra settore pubblico, ASL Torino 4, e privato sociale, CNCA Piemonte, Cooperativa Luce, ed è attivo in tutto il territorio della regione Piemonte. L'equipe che interviene sul campo è composta da operatori sanitari, operatori sociali e professionali ed operatori pari, ovvero persone che provengono e frequentano attivamente i contesti del divertimento notturno. Che cosa facciamo? Riduzione del danno. Agiamo per tutelare la salute e il benessere individuale e collettivo, mettendo al centro la persona, valorizzandone le competenze e fornendo gli strumenti che mancano, senza demonizzare il consumo e giudicare i comportamenti. Dove operiamo? Nei contesti in cui le persone si incontrano per divertirsi e condividere emozioni. Rave party, Goa party, grandi eventi di musica elettronica e club. Come? Allestendo 4 aree. Un'area informativa, dove è possibile trovare flyer, materiali di prevenzione come profilattici e materiali per la riduzione del danno, come le cannucce monouso per inolare sostanze e i chewing gum. E inoltre materiali per promuovere l'uso consapevole. Un'area chill out, pensata come uno spazio di decompressione, dove le persone possono riposarsi dopo le danze frenetiche, riaversi da un malessere, dare sfogo alla loro creatività e fare 4 chiacchiere con gli operatori. Un'area sanitaria attrezzata e gestita da personale qualificato, in grado di garantire supporto sanitario di base e gestione delle possibili emergenze. Questo ci permette di ridurre il numero di chiamate improprie al 112, con cui è attivo un protocollo regionale in caso di situazioni critiche. Infine, un'area per testare le sostanze, gestita da un operatore affiancato da tecnici di laboratorio. Il consumatore viene informato sulla composizione della sostanza attraverso un'analisi chimica, a cui viene associato un colloquio. Questo permette di aumentare la consapevolezza dei frequentatori, per valutare se assumere o meno quella sostanza e allo stesso tempo sapere tempestivamente se circolano sostanze pericolose. Da quando la nostra regione e tutto il mondo si sono dovuti confrontare con l'emergenza Covid-19, Neutravel si è spostato sui social, con interventi di Netflix come counseling sui principali social, dirette informative online e pillole di riduzione del danno. Siamo orgogliosi di saper cambiare forma, adattarci alle circostanze e alle necessità dell'utenza, sempre guidati dal faro della prevenzione e della riduzione del danno.